Hey there, I'm Nihal Dias, a developer at Allskier Solutions, and today I'll be talking to you about cloud computing with Microsoft Azure. Before we begin, I would like to tell you that this video would be an introduction to cloud computing, whereas after this video is done, you can check out the link in the description and you can start on our project, which would be cloud computing with Microsoft Azure, which includes creating a virtual machine using Microsoft Azure. Okay. So first things first, what is cloud computing? Well, keeping computers in the clouds in the sky is called cloud computing. And if you're wondering how this is possible, well, it is with modern scientific chemicals, we can alter the chemical content of clouds to make this possible. No, I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Well, I know what you're thinking, but this isn't where your stuff is stored. So, what actually is cloud computing? You can think of cloud computing in terms of renting resources like storage or computational power on someone else's computer in the same way that you rent living space and facilities in someone else's house. So you pay only for what you use, and companies providing such cloud computing services are called cloud providers. For example, you have Azure by Microsoft, AWS by Amazon, as well as GCP by Google. So, how does this all work? Well, the cloud provider will take care of all the hardware in your system and will keep it up to date. And depending on the kind of cloud service you choose, which can either be infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service, your cloud provider also takes care of some software aspects as well. A few computing services that most cloud providers usually provide include compute power, which you can think of in terms of processing, and then you have storage, then networking capabilities, as well as data analytics capabilities. So let's talk about these three cloud computing services. The first one is software as a service. So what is software as a service? Using the services of cloud-based applications like Microsoft 365 or like Google Drive, where you don't have to worry about managing, upgrading, or developing the software would be an example of using software as a service. Here the user will only use the application like Microsoft 365 or Google Drive, while the cloud provider will manage everything else. Next, you have platform as a service, which could be used as an environment for building, testing, or deploying software applications. Here, the user will only be responsible for developing their applications and keeping it up to date, and the cloud providers will take care of pretty much everything else. Developers can also develop or customize cloud-based software like MS Excel macro. Next, we come to infrastructure as a service. So what is infrastructure as a service? You can think of it like, a virtual machine where you can run any applications or service that you like. So if you don't know what a virtual machine is, you can think of it as, running your computer in your computer. So you're basically having a desktop inside your desktop. I know that might be a bit too much to process, but that is what a virtual machine pretty much is. So the cloud provider here is responsible for ensuring that the hardware works properly, while the cloud customer is or the user is responsible for ensuring that the service they are using is up to date and has the latest security patches. And this is mainly used for stuff like testing, developing applications, and storage and backup purposes as well. So here in this picture, you can see the management of these different services. So first you have your on-premises cloud, right? Which you will come to learn later as private cloud. In this video itself, we will cover it later. It'll be private cloud, where you have to manage your applications, data, runtime, middleware, operating system, virtualization, servers, storage, as well as networking. In infrastructure as a service, the cloud provider will take care of some of these aspects like virtualization, servers, storage, and networking. Whereas as you move towards the right, towards platform as a service and software as a service, the cloud provider will gain more responsibility here, where they will be taking care of more stuff. And at the end in software as a service, you are just using the applications. You don't have to worry about developing the applications or anything like that. So, which cloud service should I use? Hmm. Well, it depends on what you need actually. But most people just use cloud storage platforms like OneDrive or Google Drive, which is software as a service. Platform as a service is also a great platform for developers to roll out applications quickly and easily without too much coding. You could use either platform as a service or application infrastructure as a service, sorry, for development based on your needs. So let's talk about a few cloud deployment models. Well, we did talk about the private cloud earlier. So there are two more kinds of cloud deployment models, which is the public cloud as well as the hybrid cloud. So let's delve a bit deeper into that. So what is the public cloud? Well, you can think of the public cloud as using someone else's cloud platform like Microsoft Azure. We talked about Azure, GCP, and AWS. So those are pretty much what public clouds are. Everything here runs on your cloud provider's hardware. So all pretty much everything that you need to run any applications, well, all of that will run on your cloud provider's hardware, and you don't have to worry about anything which is hardware related. And it is the most commonly used model, right? And next, we have the advantages of opting for public cloud service providers. So what are the advantages? First of all, you have scalability. So what is scalability? You can think of it something like this. Let me give you an example. So let's say you have developed a mobile application, right? And let's say it's a clothes store, right? And initially you don't have a lot of customers because your app is not famous enough, right? So you might initially, need enough resources where, around 10 users can use this app at a time. But let's say, for some reason your publicity team did an amazing job, and, you have tens of thousands or even lakhs of people trying to access your app. Well, then you would need to scale your resources, which means you would need to increase the number of resources that are being used so that all these users can use the app. Okay, so that is pretty much what scalability is. You are increasing the number of resources that are being used by your application. And here in public cloud service providers, you pay only for what you use, and you don't have to worry about hardware because that is being taken care of by the cloud service providers. And it is the simplest model to set up and use. And a few disadvantages of opting for public cloud service providers might be that there may be a few government policies, industry standards, or legal requirements which public clouds cannot meet always. So, different countries have different policies, so you can't really customize it, right? Like that. So there may be specific requirements that cannot be met by public clouds. Again, you can't really do much about that. And here you don't own the hardware or services, and you can't manage them as you may want to. And let's say you have a few unique business requirements, such as having to maintain a legacy application, which a legacy application you can think of something as, maybe if you're running a very old application, that is what a legacy application may be in simple terms. So let's say you're running a legacy application and it uses uh, some older operating system, right? And you may not have access to that older operating system in your public cloud service provider, right? And for that you may not be able to use the public cloud. So next we come to the private cloud. So what is the private cloud? Here you create your own cloud environment, and here you are now the cloud provider for yourself or for users in your company. Awesome. But here you oversee maintenance of hardware and software services and data centers. So why might that be a problem? We'll look into that later. But first, let's talk about the advantages of private clouds. Here you can ensure that the configuration can support any scenario or legacy application. Why? Because you are configuring the cloud, right? So you can pretty much do whatever you want. And here, as I said, you have control and responsibility over security, which is a double-edged sword, of course. Private clouds can also meet strict security compliance or legal requirements as well. Because again, it is your cloud and you can do whatever you want. So a few disadvantages of private clouds, maybe that it may not be suitable really unless you're a huge company with lots of cash to be able to find people with expertise in cloud security and also ensure physical data security. So what this means is, you not only need people who are well versed in cyber security, so that your data may be safe, your data and the data of your company and your users may be safe, but you also need to ensure physical data security, which means that all this data, they are actually being stored in real disks in some place, right? So you need to make sure that there are guards there, or there are security guards that make sure that all this data is secure and no one tries to steal this data physically as well. In private clouds, you also have huge initial costs to purchase the hardware for startup and maintenance as well. So you would be buying all the hardware, so you'll have huge initial costs, and you'll also have because you're owning the equipment, this limits your agility to expand, so you can't really expand quickly. In when you're using a public cloud, you can just change a few parameters, and you can scale instantly. Like the public cloud scales your requirements instantly to meet it scales instantly to meet your requirements. But here in private clouds, you need to buy, install, and set up new hardware by yourself, so it will take a good amount of time. And private clouds require IT skills and expertise that's really hard to come by. So why would one even opt for private clouds when it's such a hassle? Well, a use case scenario for this, maybe when an organization has data that cannot be put in the public cloud, maybe for legal reasons. An example scenario may also be where government policy requires specific data to be kept in the country or privately. A private cloud can also can provide cloud functionality to external customers as well, or to specific internal departments such as accounting or human resources, and you can customize your private cloud that way to, again, as I said, do pretty much anything you want. And the last model is the hybrid cloud model. So what is a hybrid cloud model? Well, you guessed it right. It is a hybrid of the public and private clouds. So as I said, it's pretty much a combination of the public and private clouds to conduct specific services in the most appropriate location, which is either on the public or private cloud. So what does this mean? So let's say you want to have your processing done, or let's say you want to store your data instead. You want to store your data on the cloud, or you want to but you have some data that you cannot store on the cloud for legal reasons, right? So you can instead store that in your private cloud, in your data center, and you will have to maintain that as well, right? So for example, you could host a website in a public cloud and link it to a highly secure database hosted in your private cloud or your on-premises data center. And this, why is this possible? It's because these cloud providers like Azure, GCP, and AWS, they provide you with a lot of flexibility. And this is helpful when you have some things that cannot be put in the cloud, as I said, maybe for legal reasons. For example, you may have some specific pieces of data that cannot be exposed by publicly, and medical data is a prime example for this. And you will need to host this or to store this in your private data center. Another example is where one or more applications that run on old hardware that can't be updated, like as we were talking about legacy applications. This is about legacy applications. In this case, you can keep the old system running locally, right? And you can connect it to the public cloud for authorization or storage or any pretty much any other capabilities you require. Right? So a few advantages of hybrid clouds would be that you can keep any systems that use out of date hardware or an out of date operating system running and accessible, which means you can use legacy applications pretty easily when you're using a hybrid cloud. And here you have flexibility with what you run locally versus in the cloud. You can also switch between public and private services depending on which is cheaper at a certain time. Well, we all want to save money for our company, don't we? and you can use your own equipment to meet security compliance or legacy scenarios, as I said, where you need to completely control the environment. You know, and hybrid clouds are pretty much the best of both worlds when you're talking about it as a combination of the private cloud and the public cloud. So a few disadvantages of hybrid clouds would be that it can sometimes be more expensive than selecting one deployment model, since it involves you to spend money on hardware as well, because depending on your needs. And it can be more complicated to set up and manage as well in a few scenarios. So which deployment model should you choose? Are you a student? Well, the public or the hybrid clouds are your best option, as we discussed. And mostly, I would recommend the public clouds, because hybrid clouds you would have to set up all the hardware that you require as well, and public clouds will do that pretty easily for you. Do you have a business idea and want to start working on it? Again, your best options are either the public or the hybrid cloud. And again, in this case, using the public clouds would be much more beneficial, and public clouds are usually also used more frequently for these purposes. And finally, are you a big business with a top secret idea that will blow away your competitors, or are you perhaps a national government? Well, I don't know if you are watching this video, but using a private cloud model or a hybrid cloud model would be good. Preferably a private cloud, because you can ensure excellent physical security, because such an organization would be completely capable of providing such security, such physical security. And you can also trust that people won't leak your information. So let's talk a bit about Azure now, a few Azure features. As you can see, in this image, these are pretty much all the features that Azure has. You have your security and management features. You have, your platform services, your services that come with hybrid cloud, and your infrastructure services, which include compute, uh, storage, and networking capabilities. So let's go through all of them one by one. All these. I think there are about 25 to 30, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go all through all of them one by one. No, I'm just kidding. That would take a really, really, really long time, right? So instead, you can start by creating a virtual machine on Microsoft Azure. Head to the link in the description to check out the project and do it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for cloud computing with Microsoft Azure. Thank you so much for watching this video, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Hey there, congrats on finishing the basics of your topic. Carry this momentum forward by working on a hands on project based on the topic that you've chosen. Go to the description down below to get a registration link to get our accelerated course PDF. So go on, continue your journey of exponential learning.